Alright guys, so today I want to do a bit of a comparison between Elementor and Bricks in how you apply CSS classes. This is not a one's better than the other. I like both Elementor and Bricks for very different reasons. In this particular case, for the way I work, I prefer Bricks, but I style all of my elements at a class level to keep things consistent. That's the way I work. Other people might just use it more simply for creating more simple things and prefer the way that Elementor works. So it depends on what you're building, who you're building it for, what your skills are, on which one you're going to prefer. So there's not a one's better than the other. It is they are different, and depending on what you're doing, one will suit your needs better than the other one will. Right, so that said, now I'm going to look at a demo page I've created in both Bricks. So I've got a Bricks screen up here, and I've just got a grid with two columns, and in Elementor I've done the same, a grid with two columns there. So very simple layout. And what we're going to look at is two things first, and clarify some things. One of the questions was, aren't Elementor globals the same as Bricks classes? And the answer to that is no. So let's look at what I mean by that. So in Elementor, we go into our site settings, and we've pretty much got two global settings in here. The rest of this is specific to elements, but we've got two sets of global settings, which is our colors and our fonts that we can use anywhere. All right. So we're just going to look at colors today. We're going to worry about fonts because that gets too complicated. So we're just going to look at colors. In Elementor, we have our default primary, secondary, text, and accent. And then you can create some variations down here, or some additional colors down here, just by adding colors, giving them a name, and choosing the color. And what you then do is, when you want to use those colors, let's say we select this column 1, and we want to use that color as a background. We'll go into our style, background, and we're going to select a, let's say for example, use the secondary variation. And then we've used a color which is applied to that container or that element. Now note that it is only applied to this one element. It's not applied to any other element because we're styling it at the element level. Okay, this is the difference between styling at element level and styling at classes. If I applied that to a class, everywhere that I use that class will change at the same time, which I'll show you as we work through this. So heading over to Bricks, what we would do in Bricks is to look at our colors, we go into our theme styles, so this little gear icon, theme styles, and you can create different themes and apply them to different pages or different templates, or so you got more control over how things are styled in Bricks. Elementor is just one set of global settings. Bricks is a set of themes, and inside that there's a set of colors that you can create. So here's my theme that I've created. If we go into our colors, this is a little bit quirky. It actually has a little note up here about setting up your color palettes. These are for a kind of a previous way of thinking in Bricks on how they apply colors. But to get to your colors, you've got to come into here and click on one of these little icons here, any one of them, and that brings up your color palettes. It shows you swatches here, which you can roll over and see the names. I prefer to look at the list so we can actually see the names next to the colors. And if you look here, it's pretty similar to what we had in Elementor. The palettes come empty. You create the colors in here that you want, and that's your color palette. Now, once again, you can create multiple color palettes. So you can, this is one I've called Figma BEM. There's a default palette. If I go to that, it's different colors. Okay, so that's another variation between Elementor and Bricks, is that you've got more control. We can create multiple themes that apply to different pages, templates, etc., post types, whatever, and you can create multiple color palettes depending on what you're working on. So it gives you more control at that level. Now, how do we apply these? So let's go to, say, for example, this column here, which is a block in this case, and I want to change the background of that. Go to my background, choose my color. Now I'm on my default palette, which I called Figma BEM, and let's say we want it this green color. Click on that, and that's changed the background. Exactly the same as what we did in Elementor, where we went to background and selected our global color here. Oops, wrong thing. Selected our global color there, in Bricks, we go into our style, background, and select the global color we want. So at that point there, they're very, very similar in how they work. Okay, so let's clear those colors. I'm going to clear those colors. I'm going to show you the next thing. I'm going to do in Bricks first and then show you in Elementor to really highlight the difference between the class systems. Okay, so over here in Bricks, let's look at this first. I'm going to create a class. I'm going to call that demo column. For want of a better word, I'm just going to, so in Bricks, basically you up the top here in the class list, you just type in a class name, hit the enter key, and it creates a class in Bricks. All right. Then what we do is we set our background color on that, and let's say we set that to green. Now when we want this column over here to be the same color, all we do, go into our class list and type demo. There's our demo column, and there we go. We've got a green column. So what happens if I go back to this demo column class and change the color? It changes everywhere, right? What if I decide I want some spacing on here? So I'm going to put a 20 pixel spacing, padding around all of this. So you change it in the one place and it all changes because these columns have that class on them. When I update the class, it changes everywhere. And you'll note that all of these changes I'm making, I'm changing them within the Bricks UI. The only thing is that I've got this class selected up here. So all of these settings are applying to that class. All right, let's go further. Let's say box shadow. Let's put a box shadow of say 20 pixels. So actually we won't have any offset. So 0, 0, 20. We'll make it inset and we'll make it this black color. There we go. We've got an inset border. Box shadow on all of these columns because I'm applying it to the class. All right, now let's say on this column over here, the second column, we want that different. So all we do is remove the class. So now you can see, I don't think you can see that very well, but there's a hash and then a randomly generated ID for the element. On that ID, we can change that. Let's say we want more padding on this one. So we're going to link that. We want that to be 40 pixels. Okay. So now you can see on the left one, we've got a 20 pixel padding. On the right one, we've got 40 pixel padding because we applied that at the ID level. So just to clarify that, so on the class, we've got a spacing or a padding of 20 pixels all the way around. We've got a background of this yellow color, and we've got a inset border. So that's the demo column. On the second column, we've got the same thing because we've applied that class. If we're not working on the class, we're working at the ID level, and on the ID level, we've told it to give it more padding. All right. I can even change the color here, so I can go background, and so we don't want the background on that particular column to be that yellow. We change the background there. Still got the inset border. Let's remove the padding. So all I've done on this one is change the background, but it's still got all of the other styles from the class. So the 20 pixel padding and the inset. So that's the power of classes. It's that from the class, you can control multiple items as long as they inherit that class or use that class. Right, now, the next one is if we look at a breakpoint. So if I go to, say, my tablet breakpoint here. On my tablet breakpoint, I want the class to have a inset. Let's change the inset. Where's my border? There we go, box shadow. Let's change that inset to 0, 0, make it 5. And color, make it black. And tick the inset. There we go. So what I'm doing here is on my tablet, on my desktop, you see I got a nice big inset there. When I go to my tablet breakpoint, my inset's changed. So my inset's a lot smaller on both of them. Maybe it's the padding we want to change. Let's go to one of these. Make sure we select our class. And maybe at the breakpoint there, we want less padding. We want it to be 10. All right, so now if we go to our desktop, we've got 20 pixel padding around it. We go to our tablet and we've got 10 pixel padding. Now, this is all done just by clicking on UI settings in here, changing our breakpoints up there, and it creates all of the CSS for us. So I'm going to show you where that is. I've got it printing inline, so this depends on your Bricks settings. You can have the CSS created by the settings inline, or you can have them as an external sheet. I've got them inline. I'm going to search for that. So demo column. All right. So here it is there. So desktop base. Demo column, the class we just created in Bricks. Here's all our settings for it. All right. Media breakpoint of 991. Same class, changing the box shadow, changing the padding. So this CSS here has been created just by clicking on, just by simply putting a class on there and then setting our settings. That is the class system. Right. One more thing I'm going to show you in here, and then we'll go over to the Elementor side, is that what happens if I want this to do something on hover? Let's say we wanted to change color on hover. We select the class. Up the top here, we've got our pseudo states. I would select my hover state. I would then go to my background and I'd say on hover, I want the background to be green. All right. Shows me the color because I've got the hover state on. Take the hover state off. Now when I hover, it goes green. Right? I haven't had to write a single line of CSS. All I've done is told it that I want the hover state for that to be green. Update that. View the source again. Just going to do an F5. Find that again. All right. So now we've got a hover state. So if we look there, so just by clicking on settings in the UI, it's created my hover state. Now to do this in Elementor, let's come back to Elementor now and I'll show you the difference there. In Elementor, we do not have a class system. I cannot put a class up here and then apply these UI settings to it. What I can do is I can put a class on the containers. We're going to advanced. I'll call this again demo column. Go to the other column. Call that demo column. So we've got two columns with demo column, right? Now I'm just going to do this inside Elementor. You can, or I would recommend, in fact you don't, that you do this in a code manager. Keep everything consistent and clean. But I'm going to do this within Elementor. So I've given these columns a class name, right? Now, I'm going to go to the top level container to put it here. You can put it anywhere you like. And under my advanced and then custom CSS, I've got some custom CSS already there to display this as a grid, because Elementor doesn't currently have a grid layout. So in here, I'm going to put in the class name. Yeah, and just pinch some of the stuff that we did in Bricks. So what do we do in Bricks? We've got a background color, padding top right. Let's pinch the stuff that we know works. Let's just take it all and then we'll change the variables. So how you would do this in Elementor would be something like that. Let's just format that a bit so we can see what's going on. Some of this could be abbreviated to a single line short codes. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to set our background color manually first. So let's just say green for now. Okay, and see now they've changed to green. And we want our inset to be black. So we've done the same thing in Elementor, but we've had to manually create this. Now, because I've created this in Bricks, I've just done a copy and paste. If you didn't, you have to write this out. You have to type all this out to make this work, all right? Now, let's say you want this color to be one of your global colors. To do that, we have to find the global color. Now, I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go into my Chrome DevTools and just anything on the page here, and have a look down in my inspector, and have a look down my inspector here. We should see a point here. There we go. Elementor kit, depending on what kit you're on, 6. See, the first colors, the primary, secondary, text, and accent, all have the correct naming. Everything after that, and Bricks does the same thing, has a random string. So what if I want to use my one of my defined colors here? I have to go into site settings, colors, define. Okay, let's say I want to use a secondary variation. I can see here, actually just bring that up. I'm using 7077A7, which I could absolutely put into that class. Let's get back to there, the container. I could put that in there. Instead of green, I can do, oops, that didn't work. What was it? I think it was that color there. Got to copy properly. So I could put that color there, and I'm using my secondary variation, right? But if I change my secondary variation, this isn't going to change. So what I need to do is find the variable. So if I come down here, that is that variable there. Down the bottom right I am in the inspector, and I've got to put in here var didn't copy again. I'm chopping my keyboard today. Just copy that. Okay, so now I'm using my secondary color. In Elementor, I can actually now go in my global colors, and I can change my color for my secondary variation. There we go. So I can change that, and it updates with that CSS rule because I'm accessing the variable. Okay, so that's the big difference. Is now my mouse has decided to stop. Okay, so the big difference here is that to create a class that we use in Elementor, we have to we have to manually type the class out, and you normally do this in external code editor because this little window is a bit hard to work with. You got to find the variables for the colors, for example, and you've got to put those in manually. Now, remember over in Bricks here, we had a couple other things here in Bricks where we had breakpoints and hovers. Right? So how do we do a hover? Okay, we have to now go back into here, and we have to go demo column, hover. Okay, and now we're going to find the color for that we want. So again, F12. Anything here? Find the color we want. Let's say we want this accent color. Let's just pick that accent color and come back to our CSS. In our CSS, we can now do background. There you go. That's on hover. Now if we hover, we get our color. All right, so we can do the same thing as we do in Bricks. It's just that you got to do it all manually. You got to go and type all this out manually. You got to go and find the variables manually. Now look at our breakpoint. Okay, so on Bricks, what we said is that when we go to a breakpoint, what do we do? Change the color, didn't we? No. Block. We changed the padding. So on that padding, we changed the padding there. So desktop, we've got 20 pixels. Tablet breakpoint, we've got 10 pixels. Do this in Elementor. Let's find our breakpoints. I can't remember what they do in Elementor. So where's our responsive mode? I think this one is 1024. Okay. So how do we create that? We've got to create a media query. We've got to do a at media. I would say min width 1024 pixels, and then we'd set our background color to our padding to 10 pixels. All right. Sorry, missed it. Used to SAS. In SAS, it works a little bit differently. It gives you a little bit more flexibility on how you do this. So what we're saying here is at a media min width of 1024, max width, we should have that. Of 1024, we want the padding to be 10. Now if we go to our breakpoint, we've got a 10 pixel padding around that instead of 20. So you can see all of this CSS here, you've got to create manually. You've got to go and find variables. You've got to, if you want to use variables here, you've got to go and find them and use them, or have some sort of note. And then you apply the class that you've just created to the actual elements you want to apply to. So it's definitely something you can still do in Elementor. You can still apply classes to keep things consistent. What you can't do is create a class like you do in here in the UI and then apply all these settings and have it automatically create the class for you based on the settings that you choose. So that's the fundamental difference between the two. For me, I like styling at a class level to keep things consistent. So I favor the way that Bricks do it, but that doesn't mean I can't use Elementor. So if Elementor makes more sense, like if I'm doing something that a client really wants to edit and they're familiar with Elementor, and I want to keep my methodology, I can still do it in Elementor. I just can't create the classes in Elementor. Now, what I mean by that is this here, even though I'm using Elementor custom CSS box, still not, it is creating the class using the Elementor system, but it's not using the Elementor settings, if that makes sense. And I would generally not, instead of having this all over the place in different areas, I would generally pull all that out and I would stick that into a code manager and have it as a separate file anyway. So hopefully that makes sense, to clarify the differences between the two. And if you like this kind of thing, please hit the subscribe, please hit the like, and let me know if there's anything else that you'd like me to cover. Thank you.